Nulls have been confusing people in databases for years. So let's deal with nulls here in a video entitled Understanding Null. A null can create some pretty interesting challenges when you're writing queries, but they can also create some pretty interesting challenges when you're designing your tables, when you're deciding whether or not you will allow nulls in your columns. And if you will get 2, 3, 4 database designers in a room and just ask them whether we should include nulls in our tables and how often, before long, people are going to be throwing punches. There's going to be broken glass. It's just going to be a mess. Everybody has different opinions of how nulls should be used, how much they should be used, but here's the bottom line. If you're coming to SQL Server from another database background, especially from the Access world and especially from just a few years ago, then you have a little different understanding of null than what's being implemented in SQL Server. So the secret to working with null and understanding how to work with null in SQL Server is to understand what null means. So first of all, let's talk about what null does not mean. Null does not mean zero. If you see null in a database field in a column, it does not mean that that value is zero. It does not mean empty. And it does not mean that there's just space there. So what exactly does null mean? Well, very, very simple. Null means one thing and one thing only. Null means unknown. Null means placeholder, if you will. Look, I'm just kind of letting you know here that a value is coming. We're going to put a value here, but at this point, we don't know what it is. Look at our example table here. We've got a null value right there in the red square. This null means that the value of the level field for Angela James is unknown. For some reason, when we entered this data into the database, we weren't sure. We didn't have access to anybody who could tell us what level Angela James is. And so null got placed into the database. That doesn't mean that the level is zero or empty. She does have a level. We just don't know what it is. So we're storing an unknown value there at the present time. Now, the database design purist will tell you, well, this record should not have been put into the database, or you should have some sort of key level that says, not complete or whatever. Put a level 0 there. Because they're saying what you're doing here is, well, why would we build a database to store unknown values? We can store unknown values kind of out there in the ether, out there in space or whatever. But sometimes you just have to have these. Now, if you'll get a couple of database nerds in a room, they'll agree pretty quickly. Yes, sometimes you have to have nulls. But at some point, somebody will throw up the red flag and say, wait, we're getting too many nulls in here. We're just storing unknown data. So you're going to see this debate out there all over the place. But here's what you need to know about this. Now that you understand what null is, how do we deal with this null that's in that table in a query and get the desired results? Well, we cannot run a select statement that includes this particular where clause. So if we say, select first name, last name from the employee table right here where level equals null, we will not get a result back from that. Why? Because null is unknown. If null was equal to level, we wouldn't know it because it's unknown. When can anything be said to be equal with an unknown value? If I have a bag with an unknown value in it and you have a bag with an unknown value, when can we ever assume that what's in those two bags is equal? We can't. We don't know what's in them. It's unknown. Kind of makes your head hurt, doesn't it? So here's what we can do with nulls. We can run a select statement that includes this where clause. Select first name, last name from employee where level is null, and that would return the result. Because basically what we're saying there is, give us this data where level is unknown. And notice we can also use the syntax is not null. So we can test for, is the level null or is the level not null? But you got to watch this. If you write this incorrectly, you'll get results back that you don't understand. And this can also throw you off on averages if you're using number columns. And so you have to test for that. But just understand now, different databases may treat nulls different ways. For years, Access would let you search and say where level equals null, and it would return data. So watch for that. Make sure if you're ever working on something besides SQL Server, make sure you understand how they're treating nulls. Test your queries to make sure that you're getting the results that are accurate for the way you've written your query. So that's kind of the lowdown on null.